The Story of Doctor Dolittle, Part 4. The 10th chapter, The Rarest Animal of All. Pushmi-pullus are now extinct. That means there aren't any more. But long ago, when Dr. Dolittle was alive, there were some of them still left in the deepest jungles of Africa. And even then, they were very, very scarce. They had no tail, but a head at each end and sharp horns on each head. They were very shy and terribly hard to catch. The African men get most of their animals by sneaking up behind them while they're not looking. But you could not do this with the pushmi-pullu, because no matter which way you came towards him, he was always facing you. And besides, only one half of him slept at a time. The other head was always awake and watching. This was why they were never caught and never seen in zoos. Though many of the greatest huntsmen and the cleverest menagerie keepers spent years of their lives searching through the jungles in all weathers for pushmi-pullus, not a single one had ever been caught. Even then, years ago, he was the only animal in the world with two heads. Well, the monkeys set out, hunting for this animal through the forest, and after they had gone a good many miles, one of them found a peculiar footprint near the edge of a river, and they knew that a pushmi-pullu must be very near that spot. Then they went along the bank of the river a little way, and they saw a place where the grass was high and thick, and they guessed that he was in there. So they all joined hands and made a great circle round the high grass. The pushmi-pullu heard them coming, and he tried hard to break through the ring of monkeys, but he couldn't do it. When he saw that it was no use trying to escape, he sat down and waited to see what they wanted. They asked him if he would go with Dr. Dolittle and be put on show in the land of the white men. But he shook both his heads hard and said,
"Certainly not."
They explained to him that he would not be shut up in a menagerie, but would just be looked at. They told him that the doctor was a very kind man, but hadn't any money, and people would pay to see a two-headed animal, and the doctor would get rich and could pay for the boat he had borrowed to come to Africa in. But he answered,
"No. You know how shy I am. I hate being stared at."
And he almost began to cry. Then, for 3 days, they tried to persuade him. And at the end of the 3rd day, he said he would come with them and see what kind of a man the doctor was first. So the monkeys travelled back with the pushmi-pullu, and when they came to where the doctor's little house of grass was, they knocked on the door. The duck, who was packing the trunk, said,
"Come in."
And Chi-Chi very proudly took the animal inside and showed him to the doctor.
"What in the world is it?"
asked John Dolittle, gazing at the strange creature.
"Lord save us. How does it make up its mind?"
"It doesn't look to me as though it had any,"
said Jip the dog.
"This, doctor,
said Chi-Chi,
is the pushmi-pullu, the rarest animal of the African jungles, the only two-headed beast in the world. Take him home with you, and your fortune's made. People will pay any money to see him." "But I don't want any money."
"Yes, you do. Don't you remember how we had to pinch and scrape to pay the butcher's bill in Puddleby? And how are you going to get the sailor the new boat you spoke of, unless we have the money to buy it?"
"I was going to make him one."
"Oh, do be sensible. Where would you get all the wood and the nails to make one with? And besides, what are we going to live on? We shall be poorer than ever when we get back. Chi-Chi's perfectly right. Take the funny-looking thing along, do.
Well, perhaps there is something in what you say. It certainly would make a nice new kind of pet. But, does the, what do you call it, really want to go aboard?
Yes, I'll go. You have been so kind to the animals here, and the monkeys tell me that I am the only one who will do. But you must promise me that if I do not like it in the land of the white men, you will send me back.
Why, certainly. Of course, of course. Excuse me. Surely you are related to the deer family, are you not?
Yes, to the Abyssinian gazelles and the Asiatic chamois on my mother's side. My father's great-grandfather was the last of the unicorns.
Most interesting.
Murmured the doctor, and he took a book out of the trunk which Dab-Dab was packing and began turning the pages.
Let us see if Boffin says anything.
I notice that you only talk with one of your mouths. Can't the other head talk as well?
Oh yes, but I keep the other mouth for eating, mostly. In that way, I can talk while I am eating without being rude. Our people have always been very polite.
When the packing was finished and everything was ready to start, the monkeys gave a grand party for the doctor, and all the animals of the jungle came. And they had pineapples and mangoes and honey and all sorts of good things to eat and drink. After they had all finished eating, the doctor got up and said,
My friends, I am not clever at speaking long words after dinner, like some men, and I have just eaten many fruits and much honey. But I wish to tell you that I am very sad at leaving your beautiful country, because I have things to do in the land of the white men. I must go. After I have gone, remember never to let the flies settle on your food before you eat it, and do not sleep on the ground when the rains are coming. I hope you will live happily ever after.
When the doctor stopped speaking and sat down, all the monkeys clapped their hands a long time and said to one another, Let it be remembered always among our people that he sat and ate with us here under the trees, for surely he is the greatest of men. And the grand gorilla, who had the strength of 7 horses in his hairy arms, rolled a great rock up to the head of the table and said,
This stone for all time shall mark the spot.
And even to this day, in the heart of the jungle, that stone is still there, and monkey mothers passing through the forest with their families still point down at it from the branches and whisper to their children, Shh, there it is. Look where the good white man sat and ate food with us in the year of the great sickness. Then, when the party was over, the doctor and his pets started out to go back to the seashore. And all of the monkeys went with him as far as the edge of their country, carrying his trunks and bags to see him off. The 11th chapter, The Black Prince. By the end of the river, they stopped and said farewell. This took a long time because all those thousands of monkeys wanted to shake John Dolittle by the hand. Afterwards, when the doctor and his pets were going on alone, Polynesia said,
We must tread softly and talk low as we go through the land of the Jolinginki. If the king should hear us, he will send his soldiers to catch us again, for I am sure he is still very angry over the trick I played on him.
What I am wondering is where we are going to get another boat to go home in. Oh well, Perhaps we'll find one lying about on the beach that nobody is using. Never lift your foot till you come to the stile.
One day, while they were passing through a very thick part of the forest, Chi-Chi went ahead of them to look for coconuts, and while he was away, the doctor and the rest of the animals, who did not know the jungle path so well, got lost in the deep woods. They wandered around and around, but could not find their way down to the seashore. Chi-Chi, when he could not see them anywhere, was terribly upset. He climbed high trees and looked out from the top branches to try and see the doctor's high hat. He waved and shouted, he called to all the animals by name, but it was no use. They seemed to have disappeared altogether. Indeed, they had lost their way very badly. They had strayed a long way off the path, and the jungle was so thick with bushes and creepers and vines that sometimes they could hardly move at all, and the doctor had to take out his pocket knife and cut his way along. They stumbled into wet, boggy places. They got all tangled up in thick, convolvulus runners. They scratched themselves on thorns, and twice they nearly lost the medicine bag in the underbrush. There seemed no end to their troubles, and nowhere could they come upon a path. At last, after blundering about like this for many days, getting their clothes torn and their faces covered with mud, they walked right into the king's back garden by mistake. The king's men came running up at once and caught them. But Polynesia flew into the tree in the garden without anybody seeing her and hid herself. The doctor and the rest were taken before the king.
So you are caught again. This time you shall not escape. Take them all back to prison and put double locks on the door. This white man shall scrub my kitchen floor for the rest of his life.
So the doctor and his pets were led back to prison and locked up. And the doctor was told that in the morning he must begin scrubbing the kitchen floor. They were all very unhappy.
This is a great nuisance. I really must get back to Puddleby. That poor sailor will think I've stolen his ship if I don't get home soon. I wonder if those hinges are loose.
But the door was very strong and firmly locked. There seemed no chance of getting out. Then Gub Gub began to cry again. All this time, Polynesia was still sitting in the tree in the palace garden. She was saying nothing and blinking her eyes. This was always a very bad sign with Polynesia. Whenever she said nothing and blinked her eyes, it meant that somebody had been making trouble and she was thinking out some way to put things right. People who made trouble for Polynesia or her friends were nearly always sorry for it afterwards. Presently she spied Chi-Chi swinging through the trees, still looking for the doctor. When Chi-Chi saw her, he came to her tree and asked her what had become of him.
The doctor and all the animals have been caught by the king's men and locked up again. We lost our way in the jungle and blundered into the palace garden by mistake.
But couldn't you guide them?
Asked Chi-Chi, and he began to scold the parrot for letting them get lost while he was away looking for the coconuts.
It was all that stupid pig's fault. He would keep running off the path hunting for ginger roots, and I was kept so busy catching him and bringing him back that I turned to the left instead of the right when we reached the swamp. Shh! Look! There's Prince Bumpo coming into the garden. He must not see us. Don't move, whatever you do.
And there, sure enough, was Prince Bumpo, the king's son, opening the garden gate. He carried a book of fairy tales under his arm. He came strolling down the gravel walk, humming a sad song, till he reached a stone seat right under the tree where the parrot and the monkey were hiding. when he lay down on the seat and began to read fairy stories to himself. Chi-Chi and Polynesia watched him, keeping very quiet and still. After a while, the king's son laid the book down and sighed a weary sigh.
If only I were a British prince,
Said he, with a dreamy, faraway look in his eyes. Then the parrot, talking in a small, high voice like a little girl, said aloud,
Brother, someone might turn thee into a British prince, perchance.
What is this I hear? Methought the sweet music of a fairy's silver voice rang from yonder bower. Strange.
Worthy prince, thou sayest winged words of truth. What is I, Hipsitinka, the queen of the fairies that speak to thee? I am hiding in a rosebud.
Oh, tell me, fairy queen, who is it can turn me British?
In thy father's prison, there lies a famous wizard, John Dolittle by name. Many things he knows of medicine and magic, and mighty deeds has he performed. Yet their kingly father leaves him languishing long and lingering hours. Go to him, brave Bunko, secretly when the sun has set, and behold, thou shalt be made the most British prince that ever won fair lady. I have said enough. I must now go back to Fairyland. Farewell.
Farewell. 1,000 thanks, good Tripsitinka.
and he sat down on the seat again with a smile upon his face, waiting for the sun to set. The 12th chapter, Medicine and Magic. Very, very quietly, making sure that no one should see her, Polynesia then slipped out the back of the tree and flew across to the prison. She found Gub-Gub poking his nose through the bars of the window, trying to sniff the cooking smells that came from the palace kitchen. She told the pig to bring the doctor to the window because she wanted to speak to him. So Gub-Gub went and woke the doctor, who was taking a nap.
Listen, Prince Bumpo is coming here tonight to see you, and you've got to find some way to turn him British. But be sure to make him promise you first that he will open the prison door and find a ship for you to cross the sea.
This is all very well, but it isn't so easy to turn an African man into a British Caucasian. The speaker said he was addressed to be reshaped and re-dyed. It's not so simple.
I don't know anything about that, but you must turn this African prince into a Caucasian British prince. Think of a way. Think hard. You've got plenty of medicines left in the bag. He'll do anything for you. If you change his appearance, it is your only chance to get out of prison.
Well, I suppose it might be possible. Let me see. Liberated chlorine on animal pigment. Perhaps a zinc ointment as a temporary measure. Spread thickly.
Well, that night, Prince Bumpo came secretly to the doctor in prison and said to him,
Doctor, I am an unhappy prince. Years ago, I went in search of the Sleeping Beauty, whom I had read of in a book, and having travelled through the world many days, I at last found her, and kissed the lady very gently to awaken her, as the book said I should. 'Tis true indeed that she awoke, But when she saw my face, she cried out. And she ran away and wouldn't marry me. But I went to sleep again somewhere else. So I came back full of sadness to my father's kingdom. Now I hear that you are a wonderful magician and have many powerful potions. So I come to you for help. If you will turn me into a British prince, so I can go back to the Sleeping Beauty, I will give you half my kingdom and anything besides you ask. Prince Bumper, supposing I made your hair a nice blonde color, would not that do instead to make you happy? No, nothing else will satisfy me. I must be a British Caucasian prince. You know, it's very hard to change the color of a prince. One of the hardest things a magician can do. You only want your face white, do you not? Yes, that is all. Because I shall wear shining armor and gauntlets of steel like the other princes, and ride on a horse. Must your face be white all over? Yes, all over. And I would like my eyes blue too. But I suppose that would be very hard to do. Yes, it would. Well, I will do what I can for you. You will have to be very patient though. You know, with some medicines, you can never be very sure. I might have to try 2 or 3 times. You have a strong skin, yes? Well, that's alright. Now, come over here by the light. Oh, but before I do anything, you must first go down to the beach and get a ship ready, with food in it, to take me across the sea. And when I have done as you ask, you must let me and all my animals out of prison. Promise, by the crown of Jolly-Pinky.
So the prince promised and went away to get a ship ready at the seashore. When he came back and said that it was done, the doctor asked Dab-Dab to bring a basin. Then he mixed a lot of medicines in the basin and told Bumpo to dip his face in it. The prince leaned down and put his face in, right up to the ears. He held it there a long time, so long that the doctor seemed to get dreadfully anxious and fidgety, standing first on one leg and then on the other, looking at all the bottles he'd used for the mixture and reading the labels on them again and again. A strong smell filled the prison, like the smell of brown paper burning. At last, the prince lifted his face up out of the basin, breathing very hard, and all the animals cried out in surprise, for the prince's face had turned as white as snow, and his eyes, which had been mud-coloured, were a manly grey. When John Dolittle lent him a little looking-glass to see himself, he sang for joy and began dancing around the prison. But the doctor asked him not to make so much noise about it, and when he had closed his medicine bag in a hurry, he told him to open the prison door. Bumpo begged that he might keep the looking-glass, as it was the only one in the kingdom of Jolly-Ginky, and he wanted to look at himself all day long, but the doctor said he needed it to shave with. Then the prince, taking a bunch of copper keys from his pocket, undid the great double locks, and the doctor, with all his animals, ran as fast as they could down to the seashore, while Bumpo leaned against the wall of the empty dungeon, smiling after them happily, his big face shining like polished ivory in the light of the moon. When they came to the beach, they saw Polynesia and Chi-Chi waiting for them on the rocks near the ship.
I feel sorry about Bumpo. I am afraid that medicine I used will never last. Most likely, he will be as black as ever when he wakes up in the morning. That's one reason why I didn't like to leave the mirror with him. But then again, he might stay white. I had never used that mixture before. To tell the truth, I was surprised myself that it worked so well. But I had to do something, didn't I? I couldn't possibly scrub the king's kitchen for the rest of my life. It was such a dirty kitchen. I could see it from the prison window. Well, poor Bompo.
Oh, of course he'll know that we were just joking with him.
They had no business to lock us up. We never did them any harm. Serves him right.
But he didn't have anything to do with it. It was the king, his father, who had us locked up. It wasn't Bumpo's fault. I wonder if I ought to go back and apologize. Oh well, I'll send him some candy when I get to Puddleby, and who knows, he may stay white after all.
The Sleeping Beauty would never have him, even if he did. He looked better the way he was, though. But he'll never be anything really handsome, no matter what colour he was made.
Still, he had a good heart. Romantic, of course, but a good heart after all. Handsome is as handsome does.
I don't believe the poor beauty found the Sleeping Beauty at all. Most likely he kissed some farmer's fat wife who was taking a snooze under an apple tree. Can't blame her for getting scared. I wonder who he'll go and kiss this time. Silly business.
Then the push-me-pullu, the white mouse, Gub-Gub, Dab-Dab, Jip and the owl, Tutu, went on to the ship with the doctor, but Chi-Chi, Polynesia and the crocodile stayed behind because Africa was their proper home, the land where they were born. And when the doctor stood upon the boat, he looked over the side across the water, and then he remembered that they had no one with them to guide them back to Puddleby. The wide sea looked terribly big and lonesome in the moonlight, and he began to wonder if they would lose their way when they passed out of sight of land. But even while he was wondering, they heard a strange whispering noise high in the air coming through the night, and the animals all stopped saying goodbye and listened. The noise grew louder and bigger. It seemed to be coming nearer to them, a sound like the autumn wind blowing through the leaves of a poplar tree, or a great rain beating down upon a roof. And Jip, with his nose pointing and his tail quite straight, said,
Birds. Millions of them. Flying fast. That's it.
And they all looked up. And there, streaming across the face of the moon, like a huge swarm of tiny ants, they could see thousands and thousands of little birds. Soon the whole sky seemed full of them, and still more kept coming, more and more. There were so many that for a little they covered the whole moon, so it could not shine, and the sea grew dark and black, like when a storm cloud passes over the sun. And presently all these birds came down close, skimming over the water and the land, and the night sky was left clear above, and the moon shone as before. Still, never a call nor a cry nor a song they made. No sound but this great rustling of feathers, which grew greater now than ever. When they began to settle on the sands, along the ropes of the ship, anywhere and everywhere except the trees, the doctor could see that they had blue wings and white breasts and very short feathered legs. As soon as if they had all found a place to sit, suddenly there was no noise left anywhere, all was quiet, all was still. And in the silent moonlight, John Dolittle spoke.
I had no idea that we'd been in Africa so long. It will be nearly summer when we get home. But these are the swallows going back. Swallows, I thank you for waiting for us. It is very thoughtful of you. Now, we need not be afraid that we will lose our way upon the sea. Pull up the anchor and set the sail.
When the ship moved out upon the water, those who stayed behind, Chi-Chi, Polynesia, and the crocodile grew terribly sad, for never in their lives had they known anyone they liked so well as Dr. John Dolittle of Puddleby on the Marsh. And after they had called goodbye to him again and again and again, they still stood there upon the rocks, crying bitterly and waving until the ship was out of sight. End of Part 4. Please subscribe